What was your life like as a young man before you joined the Marine Corps?
Well, I joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. I turned 18 on the 10th of July, and on which date you had to register for the draft. And so I had been trying to enlist in the Marine Corps before that, because the only way to get the branch of service you wish was to enlist.
Born and raised in Harlem, went to PS5, 139. I quit high school and joined the Corps. Well, I wasn't really doing nothing in the street. It was better than doing nothing, maybe go to jail.
Working in Saginaw, Michigan. I had left Jacksonville, hadn't even finished high school, but there was some good work opportunities in Saginaw, and that's where I turned 18.
If you waited to be drafted, and then if you can envision a long line of recruits coming up to a table one by one, and the man says, "What do you want?" You say, "Navy." He says, "Army." "What do you want?" "Army." "Navy." Whatever you want, to give you something else. So I wanted the Marine Corps. The reason I wanted the Marine Corps was that people you knew were dying. This was not Vietnam. Nobody was going off to Canada to avoid going to war. Everybody went.
And it was the uniform that attracted me. So I asked the sergeant that had my papers, "Why can't I go over there in that outfit?" And he took my papers over to the Marine sergeant, and that's how I got selected. 3 of us at that time.
Actually, I joined the Marine Corps because I had a brother in the Army and a brother in the Navy. I wanted a member of the family in each branch of the service.
Well, my brother had went, and he was in the 51st Defense. And I thought I might be able to see him. Saw him one time. He came over when I was in training, to see me. He waved at me. That's all he could do. I never saw him anymore.
I figured the best way to increase my chances of survival, the best way was to be well trained.
On the ride down south, what was going through your mind at the time?
I didn't have no really intermingle with white people except when I went to high school. That was the most white people I've seen in one place.
When I stepped up to the window of this bus station to buy a ticket, and the guy said, "Round the back, boy."
I see the door say white, see the door say colored. I see Chinese people go through the white door. I felt funny at first with it. I said, well, he ain't black, he ain't colored, so I guess he can go through. But the door still said white.
And we was in the car right behind the coal tender. But unfortunately, they could not close the door. The Marine MPs were in the car behind us, looking through. These hot cinders blowing in there, you couldn't get away from it. Real high 80s and whatnot. And that was the train ride down to North Carolina.
White Marine, when we stopped to get something at a restaurant or something, he could go in and get it for me, and I couldn't go in the same place, even in uniform.
And we went to a restaurant, and the guy wanted to know, "What you doing coming here? Go around the back." And we couldn't understand it. We're in uniform. So anyway, when we went around to the back, some of the brothers that was working there told us, "Watch yourself. The boys are talking about getting themselves some Marines." In other words, we were going to be jumped on a fight, whatnot.
What was the boot camp environment like physically?
I got off the bus, and the great big black sergeant said, "Where are your orders?" And I launched into this long explanation of why I don't have orders. And he hit me, and I bounced. That was my introduction to the Marine Corps?
Well, I was just leaving Detroit, and I was looking like a Detroit young man, and I heard this loud voice, "Whoever that is back there with a hat on, get it off. You're in the Marine Corps now." Naturally, I dropped my hat, and I realized I was in the Marine Corps now.
And there was no smile on your face and all that kind of, acting like you idiot.
What was boot camp like for you emotionally?
They took you to your limit and passed. When you thought you were gonna give up, you didn't give up.
The DIs, the drill instructors, their job is to make you tough. And the way they propose to do it is to sort of break you down, build you up again. They gave no quarter. They were tough.
You mentioned the white gunnery sergeant showed up.
On the rifle range to teach us how to use the bayonets and things of that sort. And they were rough. These were the guys that would say, "All right, niggas, fall in."
It was you people in their uniform. And the war must be going bad when they brought you into our uniform. Most of those guys was from the hills. They never had shoes on until they came Marine Corps. And they lived this prejudiced life. They were above you, and they talked down to you. And you had to stand up there at attention and accept it.
It was more or less what they said, that they didn't physically hit you or nothing like that. As far as I'm concerned, I know. They ain't never physically hit me.
What was the attitude of the black drill instructors?
You was out of step, you had stood up with your face against the wall at attention, with your nose touching the wall or something. Or you stretched out with your fingers on the wall like this and see how long you can stay there.
There was one incident where we went in and I walked, and my DI, drill instructor, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "We see you don't like double time, you don't like running, so we're not gonna make you run anymore. From now on, you're gonna crawl around." And he instructed me how he wanted me to crawl, and I had to crawl all morning around the base.
If anything, I think they were determined to show that we were the equal of any white Marines. I mean, they didn't phrase it that way. Nobody ever quite said that, but their behavior indicated that that's what they thought, that's what they believed. Joining the Marine Corps is one of the best things I ever did. See, one must appreciate, I'm 17 years old. People I knew were dying. There was a war going, this is the war to end all wars. And I'm going to be part of this. I'm going to be a Marine. And this is, for me at that time, very heavy.
To show you how I felt about boot camp, when we went in the door, I leaned down because I felt I was much taller than I was, because I finished boot camp. You know, I'm a Marine. I'm a tall man now.
What was your first experience in combat after you left Montford Point?
The first time I was in combat was in Korea. It was in the 7th Marines. We hit an island called Woolaloo. We had to wait on that island, the whole island, for 12 hours before the rest of the men could come ashore, because the tide goes out and stays out for 12 hours. If the North Koreans would have counterattacked, they'd have wiped us out. The only support we had was aircraft and guns from the ship. Couldn't get no more men ashore until the 12 hours where the new tide come in. You had I understand you had an artillery unit that was the best it could be. They'd hit a fly off a mountain with one round.
Black artillery unit.
Black artillery unit.
Black Marine artillery
Black,
unit.
yes.
And you had whites alongside of you fighting.
That's the first time I gave a white boy an order. We couldn't hardly give no orders before that. They wouldn't accept an order from a black man.
They sent us to Saipan, The first thing they told us when we got there, that the Japanese didn't know the war was over, that they were still on the island of Saipan, and they were in the caves, and be careful when you go out, when you're around the base. Just be careful, because you never know where they are. To them, the war is still going on.
And the word came down that they was going to use us at night patrol because it would be hard for the Japs to see us.
What was it like to come against Chinese troops?
They ran us all, mingled, hand to hand. They told me they outnumbered us 25-1, and the more we kill, the more come.
Were you ever in fear of losing your life?
All day, every day. But that would make me fought harder, I think.
How did you respond to that fear?
After a while, it went along with everything else. You did. You had to deal with it. It's something you had to accept. To me, anyway. Otherwise, you were through.
Well, the first time that I saw action, we were in the third wave at Saipan. This is the first time I saw any amount of blood or body parts. Before I went into the service, I only saw 2 dead people. My mother took me to a wake, her friends. They were people looked like they were sleeping, clean, dressed, and that was it. But I never saw what we experienced. Body parts floating, body parts hanging off of the stretcher. And an officer told me to pick that arm up and put it on the stretcher. It was one of a soldier's arm. And it was the worst thing I could do. I couldn't eat with this hand for about 2 weeks. A fellow named Tibbs. We were talking like, he was no fun. I'm in this hole. He was talking like back and forth, you and I, and you don't answer no more. But we finally found out you got hit.
But I've seen a Marine hand a child some rations, and the child blew up in front of us. So anytime one of them come next to me again, I'd shoot him.
Our first patrol that we had at night was called a stinkin' stickum. In other words, if the body didn't stink, you would stick them. Because they supposedly had a couple of guys get shot.
Is there anything in the Marine Corps that could be passed on to our youth?
Discipline is about the only real thing I would give to my advice to somebody.
I think it'd be especially helpful to some of our young people who think the way to be, quote, bad is to ignore the rights of others, and it's not. And whatever you do, don't be a bully.
If you're gonna do something, whether you like it or not, do it as best you can. Because you're not gonna always like what comes out that street.
Even to this day, I come across a problem, I think about Marines, think about boot camp, and it's no problem anymore. I'm a Marine, I can do it.
Well, when I left the Marine Corps, I joined the Transit Authority. At that time, they called it Board of Transportation. And then it changed over to the Transit Authority. And it gave me confidence into doing the titles I was pursuing. I started out as a trolley car operator, and I ended up as a supervisor in Coney Island yardmaster. My background from the Marine Corps played a big factor in helping me pursue these jobs, because you needed confidence and patience.
Did being a Marine carry over to your public life, especially being the leader of arguably the greatest city in the world?
I would like to think that it did. Thanks to many, many people, Percy Sutton among them, who was a Tuskegee Airman, I might add, who ran for mayor in 1977. I mean, no black man ever thought of running for mayor of the greatest city in the world. As a matter of fact, until it happened, I never thought we'd have a black president, but we have.
Having a black president was something that I thought I would never see, especially growing up in the South. But it makes me have goosepimples just knowing that he was there and he made it.
Every year around Dr. King's birthday, you think things are better today. I make the point that things are not yet what they should be. We got a long way to go, but thank God they're not what they used to be. The footprints of the Montford Point Marines were left on the beaches of Roy Namar, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. The tides and winds have long ago washed them out into the seas of history, but the chosen few, in field shoes and canvas leggings, also left their marks in the firm concrete of Marine Corps history. And as new generations of Marines learn to march in those footprints, the cadence assumes the proud stride of the men of Montford Point.